Hello, 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 everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world watching this live telecast of the next edition of Awesome Workers. Awesome Workers is a special segment, a passion project of mine, and it is to celebrate those who live their life while they walk their talk and create a difference in the communities that we live in. Today, I have a very special guest and someone who actually changed my life and the way that I looked at it in the matter of 2 days. The way that he brings about distinctions, the way that he brings about transformation in you, at least for me, was life changing. And I'm really privileged to have a CEO coach, a storyteller, an amazing human being. Please put your hands together for and there we are back after a technical glitch where the internet just did that to me. So welcome back again, and thank you, Rajesh, for joining us on this edition of Awesome Workers.
Thank you, Samir. It's such a privilege to be on your wonderful labor of love that I've been hearing so much about. I watched quite a few of your episodes, and you're an amazing human being. I just love to be in your presence and in your company.
The feeling is completely mutual. Thank you so much, sir. Let's begin the conversation with, so like how life is always, it's always unscripted, right? Uh, would you share with the audience over here, what was the first moment of your own personal transformation that was the most profound for you in your journey of life?
Oh man, that's going down years and years. And so what happened was I can't remember what it was, that I was unwell and I was at home for about a month. And during that time, I started reading two books, and one of them I still remember was Meditation Yoga, and that was the moment of what I like to call spiritual awakening, where the distinction of, is there more to life than what I see around me and what I was engaged in. So that I would say is was the point where sort of a new possibility opened up for me.
How old were you at that point of time?
I must have been around, I guess, what, 26, 27, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, just to give us a little bit of context of your journey of life, I mean, what you studied, where you were, etc. Can you give us a brief history of your life before 26?
So I did all my schooling in Bombay, in Mumbai, as it's called now. And after that, I wanted to go into the management stream. But my father and my older brother, who's a dentist, thought it would be a very good idea for me to pursue dentistry. And that was not very appealing for me. But, I couldn't argue with my father and older brother. Love them both. They're great human beings. My father is no more. Long story short, obviously, I wasn't very excited about that prospect, so I didn't do very well. And lucky for me, I didn't make the grade to sort of go into dental school, and that's where the whole turning point occurred in my life. And I came back to what I wanted to do. I got an opportunity to study statistics and economics, and then from there, I got my first MBA in Bajaj Institute, and then there's been no looking back from there. So that's as far as the academics and all that are concerned. I joined the family business, which was established in 1880. We manufacture umbrellas. We have agencies of some of the topmost mills, like the Lalbai Group, for over 80, 90 years. Bombay dyeing shops, we run them in Bombay. Then ITC, Bata, all of that, So it's a very old, established business. So I spent the first 11 years of my life out of college there. And then after that, I decided to take a sabbatical to pursue music. So I told my dad, listen, I don't know if I have what it takes to be a professional musician or not, but I seem to have the talent. And is it okay if I take some time off? And he says, how long? I said, I don't know. And he said, okay, go for it. So 3.5 years, that's all I did. I practiced music, sometimes up to 16 hours a day. And I reached a stage where I was able to play concerts. I played concerts around the world. These were all informal concerts. And it was during that period that I realized that I had what it takes to be a very good amateur musician, but not a professional. And I used to go to a lot of places of worship, because it's at the end of the day, music is very spiritual. So in one of those journeys coming back, I got this whole inspiration to build a hospital. So I built a 150-bed critical care hospital, ran that for 12 years. It was during that phase that I discovered, time criticality, and how do we apply time criticality to everything that we do. So most businesses run on quality criticality and they run on cost criticality, but time criticality, being the third fundamental, is what within the context of life and death protocols of a hospital is what got ingrained in my being. And I started I discovered that I had talent to coach. So I got trained in 14 different disciplines, spent total of 80,000 hours on mastering my craft. And then when I was ready, I sold the hospital and moved on to become a professional coach. And one of my clients got acquired in Dubai, and they had a 3-year lock-in. And they invited me to shift here to help them through that lock-in period and to make the upside. And that's what got me to Dubai. So that's basically a very sort of short kind of summary of how I've reached where I've reached.
Wonderful. From dentistry to MBA, from MBA to music, from music to hospital, from hospital to coaching. It's been a rich journey for you. And along the way, uh, how did landmark happen? I mean, yes, I would just touch upon that briefly, and then we would go deeper on something else.
So what happened is, in somewhere around 1981, I discovered that my life was not working at all. in every sphere that you can imagine, I was very close to bankruptcy. And so that's the time where a friend suggested, why don't you join this workshop? And I was like, kind of too bottled up, felt totally lonely, wasn't in any good space to participate in any program. But I went along, and I kind of sat like this, throughout. I said, all right, roll it out, let me see what you got. And in that first day, something began to shift in me. At the end of day 3, there was a complete transformation, and I was amazed. I said, in 3 days, this technology can completely transform, where a human being is, and where he can be, only through conversations. I got totally engrossed with it, and I then started devoting a lot of time. And there was a period of 3 years I used to dedicate between 6 to 8 hours a day studying. When I was, certifying to become a seminar leader, I became a seminar leader. I ran many of the landmark education programs for several years, and I kept improving my statistics in terms of all the measures of success. So that basically is one of the biggest pillars of my coaching: ontology, the science of being, where through conversations we are able to transform people who are stuck in the past and get them to embrace a new future, new possibilities. So that's the story on Landmark.
Wonderful. And I've never heard this expression that you use right now, where in every area of life you are having bankruptcy, you're experiencing bankruptcy. Uh, we always connect bankruptcy only to things that are monetary, but you just touched upon it from a very wider perspective, and I think that is quite intriguing. Would you want to elaborate a little more on that?
See, bankruptcy, if you really look at it, it's, what it means is that you have less resources than, your obligations. So if it is in a organizational point of view, or if it's a person's point of view, if the amount of money that he owes people or owes companies, etc., is more than what he has, that's a bankruptcy kind of a situation. So when you apply that to your emotional state or your mental state, or so when I looked at every single area of my life, that was the experience. It was complete and total. It was homogeneous. My work had stalled. Myself, I was completely out of. There was no joy. There was no spontaneity, and so on and so forth. So that is basically what it was. When I embraced that I'm bankrupt in all of these ways. Now, actually, if you go to look at it, was I really bankrupt? No, I was. I've never been bankrupt. It's not that I didn't have the money to pay, but it's a state and an experience that when you embrace and you're able to acknowledge that you have the possibility of opening up a new future for yourself, to be able to be with people, and they can provide insight. So that was the state, and from there, the way I moved forward, and where I've reached. The so lots of people acknowledge me for many contributions that I've made along the way to their life, to their businesses. But all of those contributions come from the school of very hard knocks. It's stuff that I've been down and out and down and out, and how I've picked up myself and learned. And then they have this very strong resolve that if I've been through that kind of a mess, under my watch, I won't let you go that path. I'll fight with you tooth and nail. That's why people call me relentless. I'm in your face, and people listen to me because they sense that there's a lot of love, there's a lot of affection of a favorite relative who's there for you, and making that work. So that basically is really what I enjoy now. and to work with people, to preempt in a conversation, allow them to discover that for themselves, and then move forward from there.
There is you touched upon where you were lacking during a period of bankruptcy in your emotional state and all other areas of life. You were lacking in spontaneity, and spontaneity, I think, is a very integral element of how we live our lives. I think, right? It gives you the opportunity to live in the moment, in the now. Uh, why do you think it is so important for individuals to be more spontaneous in life?
I can speak for myself, Samir. When I remember as a small kid, when I used to romp around, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, that kind of age, you know, the world belonged to me. I belonged to the world. I had this amazing connection with my parents and with everybody around me. And then, the first ontological event occurred, which fractures the sense of belonging. And for me, it was a simple case where I broke open a toy car, and my mom walked in and she yelled at me. And then she walked away and she says, let dad come back. And then, so I was scared through the whole day. Now, that whole kind of experience and feeling that I went through was what I call the first cut. Now, through life, all of us go through a lot of hurts, upsets, disappointments, and each of them is like a cut. So, your whole complete and joyous self is now getting transformed into, a shrunk space. And that shrunk space has got all these jagged lines because of all the cuts. And the only way you can go through life is by choosing to survive. And there are 5 default ways in which we survive. We become cynical, skeptical, resigned, cocky, and arrogant. And all of those states, I just described myself. I was cynical, I was skeptical, I was resigned, I was cocky, I was arrogant, which then kind of that whole protective armor of being all of these things did not allow me to emotionally interact with people, and both ways. Uh, so that's really what this whole state is about, which is what I call uh, the whole emotional bankruptcy. Because of all these hurts, pains, you're confused, you don't know what's the way out, there's nobody there to guide you, you feel alone. And through that whole process, how do you come out of it? And the last thing that's available to you is spontaneity. The second thing that's not available to you in that state is authenticity. You cannot be authentic and you cannot be spontaneous. Like I'm able to share with you authentically, transparently, and spontaneously. This was totally alien. This was not available to me at all. So it was all pretense. It was all, anybody asked, I was like, oh, life is good, man. I'm doing well. But then how can anybody kind of even connect with you? There's no, so that's the absence of innocence, the absence of spontaneity, and the absence of being authentic really rob a human being of all their power.
How does one identify if they are living in a world of pretense? If they wanted to identify it for themselves, how do they identify whether they are living in a world of pretense or not?
I can only speak about myself, Samir. Is when I look at, so I have this strange sort of vocabulary that I've developed over the years for myself, and that vocabulary is, am I experiencing inner congruence in the moment? Or is there one part of me which wants to look good and survive in a conversation? And is there another part of me which is slightly diffident and slightly scared? So if there are two of me, then I don't have inner congruence. And then my search was, how do I create that inner congruence? Because the moment there's inner congruence, there is no pretense left. What you see is what you get. And that is a very liberating kind of space to be in. So if you ask me a question, how can human beings find that? It's I think it's fairly easy. Is Are you invested in looking good? Are you invested in pretense? Are you invested in standing on a pedestal? Are you invested in hiding all your feelings? If you're invested in all of that, then obviously it's not an authentic life.
If someone is I hear you, and it's really profound over here, and I'm just thinking to myself over here, someone who identifies that if their congruent self where they become who they are, uh, is not serving others, is not serving the people around them, and if they want to shift that, but then that shift, because everyone around them is giving them the feedback that you should be better in this, or you should think like this, or you should value other people around you, but that is not their self, then what does one do with that inner struggle where they are not really generous by nature? Let's say, let's use one situation. Let's say they're not generous by nature in giving and sharing. Then what happens?
So let me say back to you what I believe your presence right now is that in the search of being congruent and feeling congruent, the other people around you, if they are not feeling served and they keep pointing out to you something, some kind of language like, don't be selfish, be selfless. Is that the dynamic that you're pointing to, Samir? Can you help me out?
uh, my question, probably, okay, let me rephrase it, is uh, how to change their inner world once they know that they are living a world of pretense. How to change their inner world so that the external world also begins to change.
That's the thing, the whole process of success, or the pathway to success, is a combination of how you're playing in your inner game and how you're playing in your outer game, and how these two games are aligned. And when you find that things in your inner game are not supporting your outer game, and you're kind of, a lot of unfinished business from the past, and you got all this, there's no completion, there's no closure. No, that's the time where people, there are so many things that are available. Meditation is available. Working with a life coach is available. But at the end of the day, it's all about the commitment to reach that space of inner freedom, feeling whole, complete, and joyous. And so I run a program which temporarily I don't offer anymore. I think that's the one that you were talking about, the one that you attended. It used to be called Basecamp, and we're now going to be rebranding it. But in Basecamp, I think more than 40,000 people have gone through this journey of letting go of all the baggage in the past, and they are able to find their inner congruence. And as that transformation occurs, it stays permanently with them. So there is a process. It's structured. Now, is that the only way? No, there are so many ways in one can work with it. All spiritual practices promise that. Meditation, promises that. So these are the different ways. So it starts with the commitment to find that space of inner congruence and peace with yourself. The fragmented self, the disowned self, needs to be, you need to nurture that, come back. There's a hurting child within, and unless that hurting child feels complete and secure, there's no way in which you can sort of, that inner game will not support your outer game very powerfully.
I can second what you said over there about the transformation that was created in the Basecamp program. For me, life really is about before and after Basecamp, especially my coaching world, how I coach my clients and how I speak to people around me completely changed after that. And if there was one lesson, one thing that I really took away from that at a very, very deep level was the concept of the idea of distinctions. It was really transformative in the way that you presented the whole idea, uh, and to be aware of distinctions. So, if you had to do a let's say a quick what do you say, a quick 101 lesson, or to introduce the concept of distinctions, or what would you say?
So basically, there are two fundamental domains. Now, the first domain is knowledge. So in knowledge, all of us are engaged in the pursuit of understanding, of analyzing, of discovering, and ultimately, what we get at the end of that whole process, is the smallest unit of knowledge, which is a concept. So when we get conceptual knowledge about something, it releases that quest, that desire to want to know, to want to understand how something works. On the other hand, is a domain called wisdom, which the smallest unit in wisdom is a distinction. Like, for example, if you're learning how to cycle, you get onto the cycle, you wobble a little bit, maybe fall off a couple of times, but then you distinguish balance. And in the moment that you distinguish balance, you're now enabled to cycle. So that distinction balance is different from the concept of balance. I know how to cycle, as an example. You don't know how to cycle, and you say, hey, listen, can you tell me about cycling? And I can talk to you and talk to you and talk to you and explain so many different elements of cycling, and you will know so much about cycling, the history, the philosophy, the experience. I'll just keep on talking. And as I'm keeping on talking, I'm describing. And as I'm describing, you're interpreting. At the end of that whole process, whilst you know a lot about cycling, you're not enabled to cycle. So that's the state where you're now conceptually very, very strong, very powerful in cycling. But unless you get onto the cycle and unless you get that one distinction balance, there is no way in which you can cycle. So when I realized this, I started questioning everything around me. And I started looking at what's the distinction and how do I create distinctions? Because the moment a distinction is created, it enables people. So I'm known to be a very funny kind of coach or a mentor. When I tell people upfront, listen, you can ask as many questions as you like, as long as you know that I'm not committed to answer a single one of them. Because to answer the question is to do disservice. Because where are you asking the question from? You're asking the question to understand, to analyze, to fit in with everything that you know. I'm not committed to that. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested and committed that you get enabled. So, what is the equivalent of taking a cycle and giving it to you, the practice of which will enable you to get the distinction, which then enables you to cycle? That's what I'm committed to. I'm committed to enabling people. I'm not committed to answering questions. I'm not committed to analysis. I'm not committed to concepts. So when I made that as my, as the starting point and the ending point of what do I have to offer, I really came to realize, Samir, that I have nothing to offer you. Because all of the wisdom comes from you grappling with cycle. How can I offer you cycling? I cannot offer you cycling. It's something that you need to figure out. Then what is my job? My job is to present the cycle to you. Hey, Samir, go for it. Here's my, here's the first aid kit. If you fall down, don't worry. I'm right there with you. I'll take care of you. And, you go for it, man. You're able. Come on, figure it out. And then you go on to that cycle and suddenly, you get that distinction and you're good to go. So that's what I've done. I've collected hundreds of cycles which constitute our business world. And then if you ask me a question, what's the point of giving you an answer? Because that answer of mine will be totally stupid. It's not going to help you in anything. So I said, hey, hang on, Samir. For that question, here's the cycle. Come on, get on to it. You are able, man. Go for it. I'm here. I'm here to take care of anything. Don't worry. And I will not leave you till you get the distinction. Go for it. And then so there is that energy inside you that, oh, wow, I'm able. And then you grapple with that and you get that distinction. You're enabled. And then you come back and tell me you're the world's greatest coach when I did nothing. The honest truth is I did nothing. All I did was kept out of your way. I didn't muddle up your head with concepts. I didn't give you theories. I said, look, here it is. Go for it, buddy. And
I think what you do actually is you actually give them hard knocks. You really give them hard.
That's another thing, That's the question is of getting people out of that whole quest of understanding. And the beauty of it is, there's a relationship that gets formed, Samir.
Yeah,
and people are not stupid. Like, let me give you an example in your own life. You, like most people, have a favorite relative. It could be your grandfather, it could be your uncle, it could be your father. I'm somebody older, right? Now, why is that person your favorite relative? Are two fundamental reasons. One is they love you unconditionally. And number two, they have your best interest at heart, which then allows them the freedom to be absolutely straight with you. And you sense that. Contrast that with another relative of yours who's all the time giving you, goodies and taking care of you and giving you all the wrong signals. No, Samir, you're the best. Oh, man, you sing so well. Your poetry is fantastic. Your painting is terrific. And you look at them and say, bloody, what the hell is this guy praising? So there's a disconnect that takes place and it costs that person trust. So favorite relative is always straight with you and you can really connect that this person has my best interests at heart. When I discovered that, I said, look, this is the ultimate path of being a leader. So I put all the leadership books away and I started, when I started meeting people, I said, hey, Samir, can you tell me who's your most favorite relative? And then, obviously, when I asked that question, she suddenly asked it, there's a smile on your face because you're now in the presence of that favorite relative. And then I say, okay, Samir, can you tell me why is that person your favorite relative? And then you say, listen, it's because of, they are very patient with me. They, they give me very measured, inputs. They're not very flamboyant. They don't gas me up. But in their presence, I feel enabled. I feel empowered. So I listen very intently to that. And then I want to copy paste that in my life. And as I started copy pasting that from every single person with every single conversation over a period of 7 years, that's all I've been doing. And that's the process of my transformation. I constituted myself as everybody's favorite relative. Because I discovered that the favorite relative has got the right of way. That when the favorite relative speaks, you damn well listen and you get on with it. If the favorite relative says jump, you ask how high. Because of that bond, because of that love and that affection that you have, because you know that he is there for me.
Yes, it's very profound what you're saying, and it's about, I'm sure every parent wants to become that favorite relative for any individual, right? Sometimes, sadly, it is not the parent, and sometimes it is. Uh, and the question here I'm going to be asking is, how do you become that favorite relative? Meaning, in another way of saying, how does one prepare themselves not to give advices, not to tell their children what to do, but how do they create that environment where they give them the cycle and not tell them what they
Well,
have to?
if you ask me a question, and I don't know how prepared you are to listen to the answer. And if I give you the answer, I need a commitment from you, Samir, being your favorite relative, that you will, take what I give you and run with it for at least 1 month. Is that a deal?
It's a deal.
Thank you, sir. Now, from all the thousands of words that you know, for the next 1 month, can you give up 3 words?
I can.
Only 3. So those
If you tell me,
3 words are should, must, and have to.
yeah.
You give up those 3 words, either you have no language left, or the only language that you have left is a language that touches, moves, and inspires people. Because all the advice in the world lives in those 3 words. And that technology does not work. Should, must, and have to technology doesn't work. How many times should I tell you to be on time? And you're always not on time. And then again I tell you, and you should be, you must be, you have to. It doesn't work. So instead of that, start using the word works. So it's a 3-for-1 trade. I took away 3 words from you. I'm giving you 1 word in return. So the way you take this on is, you make 10 sentences of should, 10 sentences of must, 10 sentences of have to, which you normally use in your language. And corresponding to that, now create sentences with the word works. So you should eat vegetables. How would you translate that? I think it will work better for you if you eat vegetables. Or it doesn't work for me if you don't eat vegetables. You see how it's landing? It's a
Yes.
softer landing. It opens up the possibility of choice, of consideration.
And can I just make a point over here?
Sure.
Right now, while you're telling me to give up, you did not tell me you must give up these 3 words. You didn't tell me you should give up. You asked me, are you willing to?
Yeah.
So,
Very
so
good
you,
catch, Samir.
yeah, you didn't tell me that
Very
I
good
should.
catch.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that is, I think, the whole process where you make it from the other side where they decide I must, I should, rather than you saying that you must, you should.
You see, at the end of the day, in today's day and age, what works brilliantly well is a buffet as opposed to force feeding. So when you lay out whatever you want to lay out as a buffet, then trust people that they will take what they will, that they will take.
Yes. So we have an opportunity where some comments are coming in, and if there are questions from the audience who would like to ask anything, would you be willing to take some questions if they have anything to ask?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As
So
long as everybody knows that, I'm not good with questions and answers.
yes, I know that. I remember you coming into the program when I came into the program, and when I was raising my hand, you're like, "Why are you raising the hand? You have a question?" And yeah, I actually run a program which is called Turning Point, which goes along the same lines, where I tell people that I'm not here to give you answers. I'm here to
Wonderful.
allow you to find your own answers, and I think that is how we should be living our lives. Yes. Uh, there's one thing that I've observed about you in your entire story and journey of life, that you don't stop learning. You're constantly on a quest to learn and grow and learn and grow and learn and grow. No matter how much you know, you seem to be very, very hungry for knowledge and wisdom and creating more more in your own space, in your own ways. What are you currently engaged with? What is taking the most of your time these days?
So I think there are two parts to your questions. The second part is what am I engaged with now? But the first part is a little more juicy, which is why is it that I'm engaged with continuous learning? So let me answer that question first, and then I will answer the second one. See, when a student gets promoted from the 7th standard to the 8th standard, the student got promoted because obviously they are very capable and they also are competent to write the 7th standard exam. And they did a damn good job and they got promoted. But the moment they got promoted, the capability remains intact, but they're no longer competent to write the exam of the 8th standard. So therefore, they got to go through the whole year to build that competence. So it occurs to me that every promotion makes you incompetent. And whenever you are incompetent, it's because you got promoted. So with that construct, for many, many years, I've taken on a ritual that at the end of every quarter, I declare that I'm an incompetent father, an incompetent husband, and an incompetent friend to self, and an incompetent mentor and coach. I look in the mirror and I make that declaration, and then I go searching for the evidence to back it up, not the other way around. And the moment I find that evidence, then I look at, okay, now what do I need to learn and master that will create a breakthrough for me in this area that I have found that I'm incompetent in, and this is going to help me get past it. So it's to answer your question, all my engagement in learning is the reverse of the Peter principle, that I don't wait to become incompetent. I declare myself incompetent. I find where and how I'm incompetent, and then I go and look for what's going to help me create that breakthrough. And then I go, and every year I take up one very serious certification, which involves a lot of study, a lot of application, and so on and so forth. So that's the backdrop of my continuous learning and why I spent so many years and years in studying and mastering so many different disciplines. Now, coming to your second question is what is it that I'm involved in now? Basically, that's a very simple one. There's a state change that happened for me when COVID started, and I soon realized that the phenomena of social distancing is going to completely crash my business model, which was to get people into my beautiful center where 50 CEOs, you've been to that many times. It was made in the memory of my father, so I decided to let that go. And now the whole turmoil and that search began of now how do I take my practice and launch it in a meaningful way. So that whole journey has taken me about a year to completely reinvent myself, and I found that there were so many incompetencies that I had. And what happens is that when your greatest strength becomes your greatest incompetence, you're in big trouble, brother. So my greatest strength was the way in which I conduct workshops and programs, which you've been part of. And that is all what I call discovery coaching. So I will listen to what you're saying very intently, very deeply, then presents that for you. And then that becomes the opportunity of breakthrough for you, and you get a lot of value from that. Now, that is not a process, but that's not a portable process that I can put out in today's day and age, where I can't go out and tell people that, listen, what I offer you is nothing. Because actually, I'm not a coach, I'm not a mentor, I'm a garbage collector. And people are not going to pay me the kind of money I want to be paid for being a garbage collector. And I don't want to move very far away from the reality I'm a mechanic and a garbage collector. I collect all your garbage and throw it out. And once that garbage is gone, you're left free, you're left empowered, and you can really sort of start moving forward by taking very high quality decisions. So this whole process of and without sacrificing my integrity to my work, without sacrificing or sugarcoating what I do, how do I now find a way in which I can present to the world what is it that I do, so that they get two fundamental, experiences or recognition. The first recognition is, wow, I have a big problem. And second is, wow, this guy can help me solve it. Now, when these two recognitions happen, only then the kind of work that I do can sort of, people can engage with it and move forward. So this is basically the area of my current incompetence, and I'm working on it. I see the end of the tunnel in front of me, and I'm blessed that I have a lot of great people that I work with, my coaches, my friends, my mastermind, um, and obviously my wife and my son, who who have the freedom to be very straight with me. And so that's basically the scenic route answer to your question.
Very nice. And I have a question, but before I ask my question, there is a question from Nisha Shivram, where she asks, with kids around, how can we stop using must, should, have two words? Especially when the
Nisha,
kid is
Nisha,
really, really small. Yeah.
Nisha, that's a wonderful question. Many people have asked me this through the years, and every time, all I do is I smile and I say, "Listen, I can tell you the story of my boy. He's now 22. His name is Jay, and when he was about less than a year old, I made a pact with my wife that we will bring him up on a diet free of should, must, and have to." And that's what we've done. And the boy has turned out very well. He's extremely well integrated. He's able to be with people who use the language should, must, and have to. He does not use should, must, and have to. In my house, we don't use should, must, and have to. So all I can offer you is that if you really work towards it and absorb it and move forward from there, that you write down, questions, or the statements that you make, the should statements, the must statements, the have to statements, and find corresponding expressions with what works. So, you should go to sleep, is it works better for you if you go to sleep. And you so it's a question of where you will, it's not an easy path. It's a bit turbulent, but if you bring that commitment, and all I can say is it works beautifully. And the kind of relationship that has developed between all three of us is a relationship where he finds us very relevant, and he's able to come and share everything with us, knowing fully well that he's not going to get stuck in any form of advice. So those are the benefits of it.
Yes. We have about 10 minutes more, and if the audience, if you have any questions, please put them in and I will raise them over here. Uh, you mentioned something about being a garbage collector and not receiving the kind of money that if you charge, people would pay. Would you agree that it is a limiting belief?
No, it's not a limiting belief at all. It's the other way around, actually. It's like so the whole narrative around what I do is, on the one hand, I'm a mechanic, on the other hand, I'm a garbage collector. Now, how do I present that in a way in which it you know intermeshes with the internal dialogue of the people that I want to work with, and they are able to connect with me in a meaningful way, as opposed to kind of wondering, who's this guy, I don't want to work. I'm looking for a coach. I'm looking for a consultant. I'm looking for a mentor. I don't want a mechanic. I don't want a garbage collector. So the whole process of how do you presence that they get that experience without the label. So it is that label that becomes a limiting belief for them, not for me.
Hmm.
And I don't want them to be stuck with a limiting belief. I don't want them to be stuck with a egoic label that I'm offering about myself.
Yeah.
So it's about just being appropriate. It's about being mindful. It's about finding a way to presence that in a very meaningful way.
That precisely brings me to the way you're just leading me to the next question very beautifully, which is over the years you have been very mindful since 81, I believe, with the concept of distinctions, and you have been aware with the idea of not uh, allowing people to find their own way or wisdom by not telling them how to cycle, but to create the distinction of how to create the balance for themselves. And I'm sure over the years where you have done this over and over and over again in a very mindful manner would have given you greater insight and opportunity into human uh, mindset and understanding. Are you working on a book around this?
Yes, in fact, I'm writing a book now, and the book is called "Increase Profit: Train Your Teams to Generate Cash, Not Excuses."
Hmm.
And
All
the
right.
whole book is about creating this whole set of distinctions in the workplace that acknowledge people's contributions, energize them, enable them, and wean them away from a world of reasons, stories, excuses, and justifications to start living a life inside of commitments and promises, and how that whole empowering context can be created inside an organization. And I've been doing that for years. So is it possible? Yes, it is possible. Do I have case studies? Any number of them. uh, what's the before and after scenario? There's an acceleration of growth, there's a momentum that sort of gets unleashed, all that kind of stuff.
You just reminded me of a book, the latest book by Paulo Coelho, where it's called The Archer, and he talks about the world of archery, and it's a very simple book, where I think very along the lines of Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach many years ago, where I think they take a different world and then they bring full circle the concepts and ideas. We have another question from Sanjay Biswas, which is can you please share the cycle for confidence building?
I don't get the question.
So, confidence is something that we want to build in our children, in the people around us. And if we were to do it either for ourselves or for others, what is a construct or structure of confidence as an idea? Because a lot of people lack, in some area or other, they lack confidence. So, my understanding of the question is what is the way to build it?
What is another way, what is another word that we can use instead of confidence?
Reassurance?
What is another word? What are we really searching for here?
Courage?
What we are really searching for is that in the presence of a lot of like a fog or no clarity, how do you find your way forward?
Hmm.
It's about being in action, it's about being engaged, it's about being unstoppable, and it's about making things happen. If that's the dynamic that we are after, confidence is not correlated to that, because confidence in its truest essence comes from the past. I've done something, I know how to do it, and therefore I'm confident. And confidence locks you in some fixed patterns. What we are interested in is how can we make our children so resourceful that they are able to land on their feet in any and all situations and start figuring out what's the way forward. So the word that we are looking for is not confidence, but a communication to the inner child that you are able. When I was very, very young, my father crafted a sentence which took me 55 years to decode. And that sentence was that if you decide, you will do it. So how did that work for me? It worked brilliantly. If I failed, it never occurred to me that I failed. It occurred to me that I had not decided. So I would go there and I would decide, and then I will put in what I need to put in, and then I'll make it happen. That's not confidence. That's a firm belief that my father gifted to me, a belief called, son, you are able and you can figure it out. Whereas confidence is about being able to do something which you've done in the past, been there, done that, and then you come into a new situation with that formula, and that formula is not likely to work. So why are we putting that pressure on our children? I don't want my son to be confident. I want my son to experience that A, he's able and he's resourceful, he can figure it out and he can make it happen. So that's called a fixed outcome orientation with variable process.
Yeah.
And just that, those kind of resources that you bring forward, it's a completely different orientation, different approach.
Beautifully said. And one of the things that I liked so much about having a conversation with you always, whether I'm listening to you speak in an audience, in a gathering, or whether it is one-to-one, it's the beauty of the language that you use, the words that you use. And one of the words that I have caught on today in our conversation that you have repeatedly used, and I've seen you use it even before in our engagements, is the word, it occurs to me, the word occur, and you constantly use it, how this occurs to me or how that occurs to me. Would you want to just touch upon just that one concept, what occurs to you, when I ask you what occurs to you about
See,
the
that
words?
really, that thank you for asking that question. It's a very, very deep question. That really comes from the three ultimate laws of performance, which come from, is this whole science of ontology, which is the science of being. So it's be, do, have. So this is about the beingness part. So the three laws are how people perform correlates to how situations occur to them. How situations occur to them, this is the second law. How situations occur to them arises in language. And the third law is future-based language or generative language transforms how situations occur to people. So our job as leaders is to tune in, as leaders and as parents, is to tune in to how is this situation occurring to this person or to this child. And if that occurring is consistent with the behavior, the desired behavior, and therefore the desired action, and therefore the desired results, that's fine, leave it. But otherwise, instead of coming down and asking them to do different things, see how you can transform the occurring. And the way you transform that occurring is by asking only two questions. What will that do for you? And keep, what will that do for you? What will that do for you? What will that do for you? And how specifically, how specifically, how specifically. So if I give up using should, must, and have to with my child, what will that do for me? What will that do for the child? The child will get released from rules. And what will that do for the child? When the child gets released from rules, he's now able to engage his consciousness to figure things out. And what will that do for him? That now I'm enabling him to become a commando, a resilient commando, and very resourceful person, that wherever he goes, he is able to find his way out. Now, how specific? Now I'm going the other way. How specifically can I stop using the words should, must, and have to? Is I will make a list of all the should, must, and have to statements that I use. I will transform those sentences using the word works, and then I will start using them. And how specifically will you check whether that's working or not? Is I will try it. If it's not working, I'll go back to the drawing board and I will try something different. So in this way, and I can ask that one more time, in this way, when I'm opening both of these sides up, it transforms the occurring. And once the occurring gets transformed, a new possibility is born. So the art of the mentor, of the coach, of the leader, of the parent is the art of opening new possibilities for people who they lead.
Wonderful. We are coming to the end of the segment. I know you have another meeting also immediately after this. So thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. Before, if someone wants to follow you, what would be the best way to reach out to you or connect with you, or what would you share on that?
I think rajeshnagji.com,
Okay.
and I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not very active now, but I believe I'll start getting active in another 15 days to a month's time.
Okay.
And then I'll be there.
Wonderful. And from this conversation today, what is occurring to you? The whole span of this conversation, for you, is there anything that is occurring new, or anything that is coming to you through this 1 hour conversation?
I think so one of the things that is very clear here is that each one of us has something unique to offer, and if we can connect with that and keep bringing that forth, it's the metaphor of the mango. The mango tree never gets confused; it always gives mangoes. So by just staying in that space, like you have this amazing gift that you bring to this part of the world. As long as you continue on that path, the experience of success will always be yours. And if the fruits of success are not coming, then come have coffee with me, and we'll figure out what's out of alignment.
Wonderful.
But the experience of success always first, and then the fruits of success, not the other way around.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rajesh. It's been a real pleasure hosting you on Awesome Walkers over here today. Till we have our next conversation and probably a coffee, I will see you on the other side.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And that brings us to the end of today's segment of Awesome Walkers. For those of you who are out there, my question to you is, while you're listening to those conversations, what was occurring to you? What is the one insight that you're taking away from this conversation that would make a difference for you in your lives? Put it in the comments below and share someone to live a better life, hopefully. Till we meet again on another episode of Awesome Walkers, I wish you all a wonderful day ahead. Take care.